So let me introduce Joel Rister. He's at GuideStone. He's the manager and financial educator. He works with retirement customer solutions. So Joel, I'll just turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much. Brad, I appreciate you reaching out to me and being able to put this together for the ministers there in your association. So I appreciate your time this morning. What we'll do in talking with Brad, we'll talk about preparation for retirement. There will be some focus on those that are nearing retirement, but there are some slides that I want to focus on that no matter your age, especially if you're younger, the importance of getting started where you are now and the impact that that can have on your future. So let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. And when you can see this, just let me know and I'll go into the presentation.
We can see it.
All right, thank you very much. So let me go back to my slide deck where I can see it as well. And so again, it is a privilege to be here with you at GuideStone. Just to let you know, our whole reason for existence is to come alongside pastors and those in ministry and ensure that every servant of Christ finishes well. I think a lot about the Olympics that are going on now and how athletes prepared for years in advance leading up to this just to participate for a short time in an event and do their best. But preparing for retirement is not unlike that, but it is more of a marathon, being prepared now for what comes in the future. Uh, you know, as pastors, I think you will appreciate this. Psalm 37:25, I understand more and more the older I get. King David said, I was young and now I'm old. And I get that. But he also goes on to see, I've never seen the righteous forsaken or his descendants begging bread. So God will take care of us. I trust that he has us in the palm of his hand. He will care for us. But David's son Solomon in Psalm 21:5 said, good planning and hard work lead to prosperity, but hasty shortcuts lead to poverty. Solomon was a planner, and he said good planning is essential. So who's right, David or Solomon? And of course, the answer is both. It's all about stewardship. So today, I just want to talk to you a little about what what it means to prepare well for retirement. So here are some of the things that we'll review. We'll talk about retirement and what it's changing. What does that mean to retire? A planning overview. We'll give you some checkpoints along the way. We'll look at just briefly some of your options to withdraw money from GuideStone and then give you some concrete next steps. And then even after this, I have some additional slides from our ministerial resources page. So let's get started talking about retirement and it being redefined. Now, retirement has changed over the years. You think back, maybe some of our parents. My dad worked in the same industry his entire life from when I was a child, but people don't work at the same employer as much or as long. My son is 33. He has four different retirement accounts from four different employers. Uh, Many people don't have a pension. When I was growing up, many people that worked in one place their entire lives received a pension and they were taken care of in retirement. But if you're working at different employers, many of them now put the um, give you the opportunity to save, but they don't do as much saving for you. So it's changed a lot over a generation and it continues to change. So let's talk about it's not just about money in retirement. We want to admit that up front, but it is about stewardship. It's being a good steward of what God entrusts to us. So just for a moment, I want to talk about these things that are surrounding the circle here and camp on each one for just a moment. Um, People are living longer than they did in the past. Uh, The average age or life expectancy for a male is just under 80 years, and for a female, it's right at 80. But for those who reach 65, you've avoided a lot of the pitfalls of life. And for a 65-year-old couple, for a male, you have about a 1 in 3 chance to live till 90 years old. And for the females, about a 50% chance to live until you're 90. So you can see retirement may extend a long time. If you're talking from 65 to 90, that's 25 years of retirement, and it does take planning. In fact, the fastest growing segment of the population are those that are age 85 and older. Now, for this same couple, there's a 50% chance both of them are going to be alive into their 80s and at least one of them into their 90s. And I was reading on Social Security's website that for those who are in excellent health, non-smokers, there's almost a 20% that chance that one of the two will become a centenarian and reach 100 years old. So again, it's important to plan now for that lengthy possibility in retirement. But just the opposite is true. Well, not only are people living longer, they're also working longer. And you guys in ministry, I think that's particularly applicable because when God calls us, we're at his disposal. And sometimes that goes beyond normal retirement age, and we feel called into ministry. And you may still be in ministry in your late 60s, even in your 70s, but there does come a time that we may need to pull back a little and not be as active. You know, at the turn of the century, those over 65, 1 in 5 were working. That's in the year 2000. Last year, it was 1 in 4. And the projections are by 2031, 1 in 3 people over 65 will still be actively working. So if you're a minister and you want to continue to work, that's awesome. But the truth is, for some that served in smaller churches or weren't able to save adequately, it may be a necessity rather than a choice to continue working in some type of part-time role just to supplement your income or buy extra things like entertainment or travel to visit your family or just to avoid dipping into savings or make ends meet. So people are working longer. But on the opposite end of that spectrum, some people are retiring sooner than they anticipated. This slide amazes me. This is from a 2022 survey. Almost 70% of people plan to retire at 65 or after. But the fact is, of those surveyed that were over 65, only a third of them made it to 65 before they were out of the workforce. So that happens in a lot of different ways. Our health can change. I mean, we were talking about surgeries, operations, car accidents earlier before this. Um, just some of my background. I started at GuideStone in 1999, last century. But in 2016, my mom was in her late 80s, and she was either going to have to go to a nursing home or have someone live with her. In fact, we're often called the sandwich generation because our children sometimes return home and we care for them. And then our parents become like children and we have to provide care for our parents. So in 2016, I stepped away from GuideStone, 54 years old at the time, stepped away with no job lined up because I felt called to honor my mother and father. They had cared for me, and in their old age, I wanted to care for my mom. So I did that for 5.5 years and wouldn't trade that for anything in the world. It was such a blessing. But she passed away in 2021. I returned to GuideStone, but I've got to tell you, that was unexpected. And it did change my plans concerning retirement and how much I needed to save. So sometimes we may actually retire earlier than we anticipated. So we need to keep those things in mind. But whatever your retirement looks at like, you might want to just picture that. It may not be laying on a beach somewhere. It may be serving in a ministry and not serving in a smaller church that can't afford to pay you full time. But whatever that looks like, volunteering, visiting family, children, grandchildren, doing some of the hobbies that you haven't had time to do, or maybe even traveling, the one thing all of those have in common, they all take resources. So we want to make sure we plan well. So what can we do now to make sure that we finish well when that day comes, that we decide to transition into the next phase of life? Um, I mentioned the Olympics earlier. If we had two more rings here, we would have a great picture of the Olympic rings. But this is one of my favorite slides because I manage a team of educators, and often when people call in, they're anxious about things that are going on in the world. But we need to realize some of those things we have no control over. If you look on the right side of your screen, there are some things that are totally out of your control. We talked about longevity, and people are living longer, but we don't know when our day comes. Now, the Lord knows. That's in His hands. Our days are numbered, and He knows, but we don't know that. Um, Things like inflation, if our government's working hard and having trouble getting inflation under control, you and I don't have a lot of control over those things. It's an election year. In November, things may change. They will change one way or the other, but we don't have any I guess you would say control over what happens. We should use our and exercise our right to vote, but however, whatever the government policies, taxation, we have no control over that. The market returns, if I knew what those were, guys, you would all be millionaires right now. We would invest you in all the right things. But things change. One country invades another, inflation runs rampant. You never know what happens in the economy. Even in the middle section, we talked about working longer, either by choice or if you have to, or retiring early if you can. You have limited control, but I just want to focus for a few minutes on the left side of the page, some of the things that are within your control, such as your savings. We'll camp on that for a few minutes. We'll talk briefly about Social Security, about Medicare. We'll talk about budgeting, and we'll talk about your assets and how they're allocated, because that's important as we age, whatever age you're at. If you're younger, but as you age, definitely it's important to keep up with that. So let's talk about savings. And I want to give you some rules of thumb that you may not be aware of. But most financial planners say that we'll need between 70 and 85% of our final year's working salary when we retire. And if you think about that, why would you need less than 100%? Well, I can tell you one reason. I was blessed to purchase a home back in 2012. And one of the reasons I did that is I wanted to have it paid for by the time I retired. So, God willing, and knock on wood, next March, I'm going to make my last house payment before I retire. So, hopefully, that's out of the way. If you're not driving back and forth to work, you may save on transportation costs. Medicare is only $174 and change for Part B per person per month. So you may save a little even on medical, but still 70 to 85% of your final year's working income. Let me share another fact. We'll talk about Social Security in a few moments. But for the average American, this is Social Security's website, so I'm not making this up. But for the average American, Social Security replaces approximately 40% of your final year's working income. 40%. So if you need 70 to 85%, Social Security may make up about half of that. So how do you replace that other half, that other 40% or so? Well, the goal would be to have around 8 to 10 times your salary in a retirement plan at retirement age. In fact, if most financial planners say when you start to draw money out, 4% of your balance is a good safe amount to withdraw every year. So if you have 8 to 10 times let's say you had 10 times your salary and you're drawing 4% out, That would make up 40% of your salary, and Social Security would be 40%, and you would be on track. But you say, man, that's a lot of money to save, 8 to 10 times my salary in a retirement or some kind of savings. How do I get there? And this is important for any age, but especially the younger you are. People like Austin, if you start out saving 15% of your salary and you do that your entire career, you should be right on track, and you should have around 8 to 10 times your final salary saved up by the time you get to retirement age. But you have to start early. So if some of you started later in life, in fact, I was talking to Brad beforehand. Our average pastor has less than $75,000 saved at retirement. And many of them start late. The average age pastors get started with GuideStone is 40 years old. They finally wake up at 40 and think, wow, retirement may be a little closer than I thought. But if you start early, 15% is adequate. If you started later in life, you may have to save more than 15%. And we'll talk about Social Security, but some pastors have opted out of Social Security. And if you don't have Social Security, you're going to have to save much more than 15%. We recommend 25% or more. So it's important that we don't opt out for other reasons. That's a theological decision. We'll talk about that. But we need to stay in Social Security. There are a lot of benefits, but we also need to contribute an adequate amount. And some churches may help with that 15%. They may do 5% or 10%. I hope your church is able to do that. We have some great resources to take to your church if they're not saying GuideStone, not you as the pastor, but GuideStone recommends a church have a goal of helping their ministers with 10% of salary. So we've got some great resources to help you and your church make sure you're contributing enough. So when you contribute, there are 3 ways to get money into your retirement plan. You as the employee can contribute. Your employer can and should contribute. Not all smaller churches do that, but your employer can make contributions. And then you can consolidate or roll over. Many ministers I talk to, they may be bivocational and they have another retirement plan at their secular job and they want to consolidate that. You can do that. Or maybe you've worked at other organizations in the past. The IRS will allow you to mix and match and roll over and consolidate everything except Roth IRAs. So there are potentials of consolidating that all together, and I'll talk about some of the benefits for ministers in just a moment. But just briefly, one of the questions we get asked a lot, people are not sure about when their contributions are put in. How do they do that? So there are 2 ways to contribute, and I want to make sure you understand that. There is a tax sheltered, that is a traditional way, and then a Roth contribution. And the church retirement plan allows either one of these. So let me say, when it comes to your employer contributions, you're going to have to pay taxes on those at retirement. Now, there are some exceptions I'll talk about on the next slide for ministers. But on your contributions, you have 2 ways of putting it in. So let me give you an example. Tax sheltered, if you had a $60,000 salary and you said, well, the church is going to help out some with 5%, I'm going to put 10% of my salary in. So if you do 10% of 60,000, that's $6,000. That 6,000 goes in tax sheltered. You don't pay any taxes now. In fact, your W-2 from the church, it won't show 60, it will show 54,000. So you get a tax break up front, but you are basically kicking the can down the road. And at retirement, when you take the money out, then taxes are owed on the contribution and earnings. And even if you are independently wealthy and you don't need this retirement account, the IRS says at age 73, you have to start taking money out and paying taxes. They want their fair share. This is not to pass along as an inheritance. So tax sheltered, you get your benefit up front. Now, on the other side of the screen, you see Roth, and there's a lot of talk about Roth IRAs and Roth contribution. Roth means you're simply paying your taxes up front. So in the same example, $60,000 salary, if you did 10% or 6,000 as a Roth, your W-2 is going to show the full 60,000. There's no tax break up front. However, as you age and those contributions begin earning, all of the earnings come out with no taxes. You've already paid taxes on the contribution, and the earnings have no taxes if you take them out after at least 5 years, and you have to be 59 and a half. So you've got your taxes out up front. The IRS doesn't care about when you take the money out. You can save that until later. There's no age 73, but when you go to take it out, it's tax free. So one, tax sheltered, you get your benefit up front. Roth, you get a delayed benefit. And for someone, a lot of our members, they understand the difference, but they ask the question, well, which one's better for me? So let me share this with you. Roth tends to be more beneficial the younger you are because those earnings have longer to grow, and they may be 5 or 6 times as much as your contributions if you started early in your career. So Roth is really beneficial for younger people, and it's beneficial for people in a lower tax bracket. Now, gentlemen, you don't need me to tell you, most people don't go into ministry for the money. Many ministers are in a lower tax bracket. So Roth can also be beneficial if you're paying less taxes now than you would be in retirement. And I would be happy to talk to any of you in a follow-up appointment to take a look at your account and specifically to see which would be better for you. Having said that, let me share with you anyone on here who is a minister for tax purposes, you're ordained, licensed, or commissioned as a minister, there's some special and unique tax advantages you have. So for a minister, if you do tax sheltered and take your benefit up front, it reduces your taxes now. So you have less income to report now. It also reduces the Social Security or SECA tax that you're paying up front. So if you do tax shelter now, where most people, when they retire, have to pay taxes, how many of you are familiar with housing allowance? I can see you, so you can just raise your hand. Okay. So if you take housing allowance now, you know that that portion of your salary is not taxable for federal income tax. The good news for ministers is the IRS allows you in retirement, if you have saved money and it's in a 403B account like you would have in the church retirement plan with GuideStone, your denomination can designate housing for you in retirement. So if you tell us you've been saving and you've got a couple of $100,000, it's all taxable. If you tell us I'm going to use X percent of this every month for housing, that portion is not taxable in retirement. So you didn't get taxed up front, and then you delayed it. And when most people would pay taxes as a minister, if you use it for housing, you don't pay taxes on that either. So that's one of the biggest benefits of saving in a retirement plan with GuideStone. You cannot do that on an IRA. So if you have a traditional IRA somewhere and you want to consolidate that into your church retirement plan, you can use housing, claim housing on that in retirement and not pay taxes. So that's one of the biggest benefits. So if you do have questions about that, note that, and we need to talk about that. But that's a great benefit for ministers. Now, there are other benefits for ministers. This Brad mentioned before we got started. If you are participating in the cooperative program and sending money in through the Pennsylvania, South Jersey State Convention, they will provide some benefits for you as an incentive to save for retirement. So this is regardless of your age. If you are a minister, you have these benefits if you're contributing $50 a month or more to your retirement plan through GuideStone. So the first one is disability income. If something happens to you and you're a pastor, and I had a pastor friend who had surgery and they accidentally nicked his vocal cords. And for almost a year, he could not preach. He could barely whisper. But this $500 a month would be in addition to any insurance disability or any Social Security disability. This is just an extra benefit to help you during those times if you are disabled. So not only that, but the state convention continues to contribute to your account $35 a month, and you get $500 a month. Another benefit that they provide is what's called survivor protection. Now, this can be as much as $100,000. It's similar to term life insurance. If something happened to you and you pass away, there's money to protect your family. So this is on a scale, if you're 35 or under, it's $100,000. But for example, 36 to 45, it goes down to $75,000. 46 to 55, it goes down to $50,000. So as you age, the benefits are smaller, but they're in effect no matter what your age. So you need to keep that in mind. And if you're actively contributing $50 a month or more to the church retirement plan, you have these benefits through GuideStone and your state convention. And then finally, it is discretionary, but your state convention, when they vote and meet in the fall, if their budget allows, they may even make a contribution to your retirement account once a year. Before COVID, all of the state conventions did $17.50 a month or $210 a year, but they would do it monthly. But after COVID hit, every state convention has their own rules, but it's usually a one-time contribution, and it can be anywhere from $200 to $500 a year as an incentive for you to save for retirement. If you're doing $50 or more a month, the state convention provides these benefits for you. So keep that in mind, regardless of your age, these benefits are available. You have to be recognized by the state convention and participating through the cooperative program and giving through the state convention. So let's pause for a moment and shift a little to talk about briefly Social Security. I mentioned that for most Americans, Social Security provides about 40% of your pre-retirement income. Now, if you are if you're at the poverty level of income, it could be over 70% of your income that Social Security replaces. But if you're making good money, it could be less than 30%. But if you go to, you'll see it on the screen, the bottom left, ssa.gov, that's Social Security's website. And about halfway down the page, there is a place that says My Social Security, and there's a box that says Learn More. If you click on the box, rather than saying generally it pays 40% of your income, you can actually set up an account with Social Security, and just like you could log into your GuideStone account and get an estimate of your retirement income, you can log into Social Security's website and see what your Social Security is, not the average, but yours based on your earnings. It will also show you your annual earnings record. Now, if you're 60 or older, you may get something in the mail every year if you don't have a My Social Security account, but you don't have to wait to get something in the mail. You can log in and see that online. So if you've had at least 10 years of earnings, you should be able to log into Social Security and see the projection for your account. Now, if you're young and you've only been serving for 5 years that you've paid into Social Security, you may not be able to see an account until you have 10 years. And by the way, ministers, Social Security is not available for everyone. You have to have a minimum of 40 credits. Now, you get a credit when you earn around $1,600 in a year. And Social Security will allow you to get 4 credits per year. So if you make $7,000 a year or so, you'll get 4 credits by working and paying into Social Security. And that's why I say 4 credits a year, you have to have 40 credits to qualify for Social Security. So that's 10 years work history that you've paid into Social Security. Now, I do want you to hear this. Social Security, you have to have 40 quarters or be married to someone who has 40 quarters. So some of our ministers who have opted out of Social Security and say, I don't have 40 quarters where I paid into Social Security. You have two options. Number one, you can work in secular work and pay in, work part time for 10 years and get your quarters. Or if your spouse has been working and paying into Social Security and they have 40 quarters, you still qualify as the spouse of someone who has 40 quarters. So there are a couple of ways to get there. But I would encourage you to log into ssa.gov and get an estimate of your benefits. Now, the circles on the right, this is based on someone who was born between 1955 to 59. So if your full retirement age is 66 in a few months, this applies. If you were born in 60 or after, your full retirement age is 67. But there are benefits that you have for waiting until your full retirement age to take Social Security. Now, you may know this, but you can take Social Security as early as 62. I turned 62 at the end of last year. So I qualify for early Social Security. But if I take Social Security now at 62, every year that I take it early before my full retirement age, it goes down 6.25%. So if my full retirement age is 67 and I take it 5 years early, that's almost a 30% reduction in benefits permanently for the rest of my life. And if I'm still working, there's a limit on how much I can earn and still draw my Social Security benefit. So if I make over $22,320, for every $2 over that, my benefit goes down $1. So let's say I made 42,000, that's 20 over. My benefits that are reduced by 30% already are going to be reduced another $10,000 because I made over the limit. So there is an earnings limit if you take it early. Now, again, if you go to full retirement age, you get your full benefit. But consider if you delay past that, every year you delay it goes up 8%. So my full retirement age is 67. If I delayed 3 years until 70, that's almost 25% more benefit. If your full retirement age is 66 and you delay 4 years, that's 32% extra benefit. But it's not only for your lifetime, but if you're the primary wage earner, when you pass away, your spouse gets the larger of her benefits or yours. And if yours was the larger and you've delayed and locked in a larger benefit, your spouse also gets that for the rest of her lifetime. So by delaying, you increase your benefits not only for you, but if you're the primary wage earner, and most of us guys pass away earlier than the ladies, then you're protecting your spouse as well. So there are some benefits for considering delayed retirement. So we do have a Social Security webinar that is recorded. It's posted online. It's under at guidestone.org under resources and webinars. And I told Brad, you're the first group to know because I only found this out yesterday afternoon. I was in a meeting with the Director of Communications of Social Security for the Chicago office and the one for the Indianapolis office. We are going to be hosting a Social Security webinar with those two presenting on October 24th. So we will have that live. You'll get an invitation to that. So if you want to get into the details of Social Security, ask your questions, you're going to have an opportunity to do that coming up with GuideStone. Medicare, we also have a Medicare webinar posted. I won't go into a lot of details, but if you're not on Medicare, you still apply through the Social Security office for Medicare. But Medicare also has a website. You can see that at the bottom of the page, medicare.gov, G-O-V. You've got parts A and B that was original Medicare. Part A is your hospital insurance. And for most, there's no no cost for that. And you can sign up at age 65. But even for a hospital stay, the deductible is a little over $1,600. So there's still a cost. Part B is what you and I would know as health insurance. It covers your doctors, your MRIs, CT scans, all of that. There is a cost. This year, again, it's $174 and change per month per person. So if a couple, that would be about $358 a month. And this has a deductible a little over $200, and then it's an 80-20 copay. Medicare pays 80%, you pay 20%. So that's original Medicare, parts A and B, hospital and your medical insurance. But some people are even concerned that, well, that 20%, what if I go into the hospital, not a knee replacement, but what if I have a heart attack or I'm in a car accident, I'm in the hospital 30, 40 days and run up a $300,000 bill? The hospital part, most of that should be covered, but all those doctors that come see you and the nurses and all the tests they run, you're going to end up paying 20%. So many people will take out what's called a supplement through a private insurer to cover the 20% Medicare doesn't cover. Those are available through companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, Cigna. There are several, United Healthcare, even GuideStone can help you with a supplement. We do provide those. And then you have part D, think drugs, D for drugs, that is prescription coverage. And Medicare's website is great here. This is provided through private insurers, but Medicare's website, Medicare.gov, will let you put in any prescriptions that you take on a regular basis. My mom had 13 prescriptions that she took. You can put in the name of the medicine, the dosage, and it will look at the 20 or 30 or 40 plans available in your area, and it will tell you, based on the drugs you take, here's the most economical plan. It has the lowest cost, the lowest deductible, the lowest copay. Here's what we recommend. So it's great. Now, you see part C. C is something newer. These are called Advantage plans. You may see people like Joe Namath or the guy that played JJ on Good Times from the past. You may see actors or sports people saying, "Oh, we've got this great plan, and you have all these extra benefits for hearing aids and maybe a health club benefits. You can even get a ride to a doctor." These are through private insurance companies that take over parts A, B, and often D. They consolidate it, but they have a smaller group of doctors you have to go to. You have to go to a primary care physician and be referred to a specialist. You can't go to any doctor that you want to see. So be very careful on these plans. I have an aunt that switched to an Advantage plan to save a little on cost, and she saved a few dollars a month, but she has to go an hour and a half to see her doctor because the doctors in her little community of 1,000 are not in the network. So there are some disadvantages to the quote Advantage plans that are offered. So be careful when shopping those, but we do have webinars about Medicare. If you want to know more about that, we have people that can help you that are specialists and come alongside, but we have a webinar there. So we talked about saving and Social Security. We talked a little about insurance and Medicare. Budgeting is essential. One of the questions that I get, probably 90% of the one-on-one meetings that I have, is, am I going to have enough at retirement? Which is a great question. But my immediate response is, how much do you need? And most people can't tell me the answer to that. Well, I don't know. And it's like, well, you need to take a look at where your expenditures are now, and we can make a projection with inflation what those will be, but you need to know what your needs are. Create a budget. And then it goes without saying, but we need to work at paying off debt, whether that's student loans, consumer debt, even mortgages. But there is an order to pay off debt and different ways to do that. A snowball effect, focusing on the smaller ones first, or there's one where you can look at the highest interest rates first, but getting that under control before we retire. And then it's common sense, but spending less than what we make, staying within our means. Most Americans actually spend more than they make each month. So here's a general rule for budgeting. Um, if you don't have a budget, 50% approximately should be for essentials. And when I say essentials, I mean things like putting a roof over your head, your mortgage, your insurance, your taxes, utilities, groceries, gas, transportation costs, and I believe tithing is an essential. So you need to keep that within the 50% or so, and then about 30% can go for non-essentials, those things that I really like going out to eat or watching a movie or traveling, that getting new clothes. All of those are nice, but they're not essential. So about 30% for things like that. And then that leaves about 20% for savings and or paying off debt. So we had mentioned 15% for retirement, but 20% would be available in this plan. And by the way, if you do have savings outside of retirement, just to give you a hint, this is, if it helps, that's great. If not, that's fine. I had my son works for JP Morgan, which is Chase Bank, and I have a mortgage for a few more months, checking, savings, credit card. Their savings was paying 1/100th of a percent. GuideStone has a money market fund that is paying right at 5%, 4.95 last time I checked. Over the last year, it's averaged a little over 5. I moved my money from an account that was paying nothing into a GuideStone money market. There used to be $1,000 minimum for that, and we changed that just recently. There's $100 minimum. But if you, I would encourage you, if you do have a savings account, check to see what rate of interest you're getting on that. And if we can help you, that's fine. But in savings, you need to be earning something on those savings. And then finally, as we age, our needs change, and we need to take a look at where we're invested. And some of you may have an account at GuideStone and have no idea where you're invested. So I would encourage you to follow up with an educator, have a plan review, just a 30-minute meeting to talk about your retirement account. But our time horizons change. In 2008 and 9, we had a housing crisis. My investments were within $150 of being 50% of what they were before the housing crisis. 50, can you imagine your retirement account balance going down 50%? And my response was, man, this is great. Stocks are on sale 50%. I'm going to start putting more money in at my employer. Well, that served me well, but I was younger. When 2020 COVID hit and my balance went down about 33%, I had to reevaluate and saying, I'm not as young as I used to be. I don't like the feeling of the market being down that much. If it goes back up, I need to reassess. My time horizon is shorter, my risk tolerance is lower, and our needs do change, and our goals may even change over time. So I would encourage you to review that. At GuideStone, we have a couple of ways to make it easy for you. We have an approach that's called Do It For Me. So we have some funds, we call them target date funds. We target the date of your retirement so that if you're younger, like Austin is, it's going to be more aggressive automatically. But the older you get, it will become more conservative automatically. We manage the funds. In fact, it's not a one mutual fund, it's comprised of about 9 to 10 different mutual funds. And again, as you can see at the top of the page, the dark blue being the more aggressive. When you're younger, it's really aggressive. But as you age and approach retirement and even go into retirement, it continues to become more conservative. So we have funds that target the date of retirement and automatically become more conservative. We also have some that target risk. So you can say, well, I need to be aggressive, but those are more, those stay the same and don't change until you let us know. So you can be aggressive or conservative, but it's always going to stay that way. So we have some funds that are pre-made that we It's a do it for me approach. Now, on the other hand, if you feel confident in investing, we have almost 20 different select funds from US equities, international equities or stock. You can get large cap, small cap. You can get value or growth funds. We've got an incredible selection of funds. We even have impact funds where we invest in companies that actually make an impact in countries that don't have access to clean water, or in pregnancy and advocacy centers. So we invest in certain things. You have a lot of selections. And by the way, this is not on the slide, but just know that when you invest at GuideStone, you can feel good about your investments. Your faith and your finances don't have to be separated. We do have screenings in place to avoid investments in any industries such as abortion, alcohol, tobacco, pornography or sexual immorality, or gambling and gaming. We may apply additional screens, but those are always in place. So we have some funds that are similar to the S&P 500, the largest 500 U.S. companies, but you won't find like Phillips Morris Tobacco or Anheuser-Busch in your portfolio. You may only find 470 of those 500 companies, but you can pick and choose your own mutual funds. And then this is something that is relatively new in the last 10 years or so. When I started at GuideStone, we registered our funds. People would call in and say, well, can you tell me what funds I need to be invested in? And we would have to respond, no, we can educate you, but we can't advise you. Well, we actually can advise you. And if you need someone to come alongside you, especially if your account balance grows and you're getting closer to retirement and you don't want to focus on that, you want to focus on other things, we do have registered investment advisors. They're all CFPs, certified financial planners, and they can come alongside and offer services such as managed account, where they manage the investments in your account for you. Now, there is a small fee for that, or they can provide a full suite of services in what's called wealth management. So they can help you with estate planning, tax planning, insurance. It's a much broader service rather than just managing the funds in your account. Now, again, there are fees for this, but we are a nonprofit company. And so the fees, I think, you're going to find very favorable compared to having a local guy like at Edward Jones or something. But we do provide that service for a fee that someone can come alongside and you can do it together. They meet with you to review your goals. You meet with them on either a 6-month or annual basis to make sure nothing has changed, but they help take some of the pressure off by managing that for you. So that is available if you're interested. So quickly, let's talk. Many of you are 50 or older that are here today. So let me talk about just some checkpoints and remember things to do at different ages. So in your 50s, the IRS concedes that most of us haven't saved enough. In fact, when you turn 50, the IRS allows you to put more into retirement plans. For example, if you're contributing to an IRA, anyone can put up to $7,000 a year in an IRA. But when you turn 50, the IRS says, we'll give you another 1,000. You can put 8,000. But in your 403B retirement plan at GuideStone, this is an employer-sponsored plan, the church retirement plan. So these plans, along with 401ks, the limits are much higher. Rather than an IRA limit of 7,000, the limit into your retirement plan at GuideStone is $23,000 a year. And once you turn 50, the IRS allows you another $7,500. So if you had the money and you're wanting to shelter it from taxes and save more for retirement, the IRS says you can put, once you're 50 or older, $30,500 a year into retirement and not pay taxes on that income. So much higher limits. So it's time to assess, do I have a little more disposable income? Now, are my taxes high? Do I need to put more aside for retirement? If so, just know that you can increase contribution, and you should organize your assets. Look at where you're invested. If you're like my son that has 4 different retirement accounts, it may be time to think about consolidation. First of all, for the minister's housing allowance is a huge thing. but also just to keep track of where those are. I helped a lady, it's been almost a year ago in Oklahoma, consolidated assets. She had a teacher's plan in Texas, a teacher's plan in Oklahoma. We got those, we consolidated. She said, I've got one more. I used to work for a company in the Fort Worth area. And I said, okay, who's it with? And she said, I don't know. I don't have a login. And I said, well, you need to call your former employer and find out who the plan is with. And she said, well, I can't. They went bankrupt. So she has money in a retirement plan somewhere, but unfortunately, there is no national directory. So she has retirement savings and she doesn't know where it is. So I would encourage you consider consolidation and organizing your assets once you're 50 or older. And then in your 60s, this is all about me. Review where you're invested and make sure if your needs have changed that you're invested appropriately. Again, we have educators that can come alongside, provide a recommendation for you and work with you at no charge. Look at Social Security options. A lot of people just sign up at 62 and say, hey, I'm old enough, I'm going to sign up, and don't realize there are some disadvantages for applying early. Consider retirement income. We'll talk about that in just a moment. What are your choices here at GuideStone? Look at a budget, creating that, making sure. In fact, we even encourage people, have a budget for retirement, and about 2 years before you pull the trigger, see if you can live on that budget for the next 2 years, and you'll know, oh, hey, we can do this. I can retire, or no, we're short every month. Maybe I need to work and save another year or two. And then if you're 65 or older, you can enroll in Part A of Medicare at no cost. Even if you're still working, you can do that. The only reason you wouldn't, if you have a high deductible plan and you have a health savings account, you don't need to sign up for Medicare because you can't have a health savings account anymore and be active in a plan. And then in your 70s, again, 70 is the latest you want to access Social Security. You can delay it until then and get the benefit, but it doesn't go up after 70. And you can only go back 6 months. I helped a lady in Central America, mission sending organization. I went to a area retreat and everyone kept saying, you need to meet with this lady. She never signed up for a meeting. And so afterwards, I reached out and contacted her. We set up a one-on-one appointment. She was 74, and on the application online, she was concerned about foreign earned income. There was a question, and she didn't know how to answer it. She had delayed 4 years. I got Social Security on the line. We applied. She finished her application during our appointment, but she could only go back 6 months. She missed 3.5 years of Social Security benefit because she didn't sign up. So never go past age 70. And then if you are 73 and you have money with GuideStone, you need to start taking it out. The IRS will penalize you. It used to be 50% penalty. They've lowered that to 25% penalty, but they still penalize you. So we will automatically take that out and send it to you, even if you don't request it. But there are some things you need to think about even in your 70s. So just a moment, and then we'll kind of wind down and give you some next steps. But let's talk about your money at GuideStone. When you do get to retirement, what kind of options do you have? So the first step, as I mentioned earlier, you need to determine what are your needs? What's your budget going to be for retirement? Because we can't tell you if you're going to have enough if you don't know how much you need. So look at your needs, number one. Number two, look at your Social Security. Again, I mentioned ssa.gov. Go get your estimate for you and your spouse, because even if your spouse never worked a day in her life, she still qualifies for a spousal benefit, which if she reaches full retirement age can be up to 50% of your benefit. So there's a spousal benefit as well. So both of you need to sign up. You know what your needs are, look at your Social Security and see if there's a shortfall. If Social Security only replaces 40%, chances are it's not going to be enough. See what your shortfall is, and then come to GuideStone and talk about your options. So at GuideStone, just know that when you get there, you will have options. The first option, and many of our members who've saved quite a bit will look at this option first. It's called a systematic withdrawal. Think about a flexible retirement plan. You're invested in whatever fund or funds of your choice. And the systematic withdrawal, you're in control. You tell us how much to take out. It can be a percentage, like 4% of your balance, divided up into 12 monthly payments. You can say, I have a need of $1,500 a month. You name the amount, you can change it, stop it, start it. You can take a lump sum out, go buy a car if you need a new car, if you need to replace the roof on your house. It's very flexible. It's your money in your account and it's totally under your control. The only downside on that is if you're too aggressive, you could exhaust all the funds in the account before you pass away. So the only downside is if you don't have enough and you run out of money in your retirement account, but it's very flexible. So a lot of people lean towards that option. The second option, though, life income annuity, is more akin to Social Security. It is a fixed option. It's not flexible, but you cannot outlive it. So there are options that you can say, just like Social Security, you can say, based on my savings and my age and my wife's age, how much would GuideStone give me per month for the rest of both of our lives? If I pass away, my wife's still going to get it, and you pay us until we both pass away. So there are some lifetime options that you cannot run out of money. That's the main advantage. The disadvantage would be if you set up a benefit for $1,500 a month, 15 years from now, $1,500 a month won't be worth as much money. So inflation can eat into that. There's no cost of living adjustment, but it is guaranteed that you cannot outlive it. And also, there's a false thought out there that, oh, but what if we both pass away in a car accident? That's the end of the money, right? And GuideStone gets all the money. What you could set up an option like that, but very few of our members do. They set up an option, what's called a cash refund, so that if you have $1,500 a month for life and both of you die in a car accident in a year, and you think, well, I hadn't got all my money back. If you have a cash refund, your children or your favorite charity, whoever you want that money to go to, it goes to them. So you do have lifetime options with beneficiaries available as well. So some people will actually not do one or the other. They'll do a combination. They'll say, well, Joel, I'm $1,500 a month short with Social Security on what my budgeted by basic needs are. And they'll take a lifetime stream of income for $1,500, and maybe that doesn't use up all their account, and they still have several $1,000s, 50,000, 100,000 in savings, and they keep that flexible just to draw it out as they need it. So it's not an either or, you can combine the two. So all of that to say, you will have many options when you get to retirement. And I would always encourage someone to call in. You can do this on your computer online and do everything and print out a copy, sign it, send it in and get started. But I would always encourage you to call us. Let us walk you through those options and help you determine what's best for you. So next steps. This has been a lot of information in a fairly short period of time, less than an hour. So what are my next steps? So let me encourage you, make sure you have access to your My GuideStone account. If you have savings with us, it's myguidestone.org. Log in, view your account, but you can get an estimate of what your future income will be. So you can, at the top of the screen, there's a retirement and income option in the menu. And below that, under withdrawals, there's one that says estimate and apply for retirement income. You can get an estimate anytime you want, or meet with one of our educators and they'll do that for you. Go to Social Security's website, look at your benefits there. If you need help, we do have advisors, but again, the educators, there's a QR code here you can scan with your phone, or if you log into your My GuideStone, you should have a tab in the upper right that says schedule an appointment with an educator. That's free of charge, 30 minutes at your convenience. You pick the date, the time, schedule an appointment, and we'll contact you and have a virtual call just like this and review your personal retirement account with you. There's a tool, a retirement readiness, to make sure you're on track. We can talk to you about Social Security, Medicare, retirement income, all the things you see here, and give you some next steps to get you on track if you're not on track, or confirm that you are on track. So that's free of charge, absolutely free. And then no matter what your age, we've got a brand new member journey, guidestone.org/member journey. And even if you're in your 30s or 20s or 40s, no matter where you are, there are steps along the way. There are short videos, there are articles that can help you with debt payoff, reduction, uh, increased contributions, different things, budgeting. But it's all free of charge, free resources. It's a great place to go. And then, and I'll end here. There are several slides that I'll just mention briefly after this, but we've got a great resource for ministers. It's called guidestone.org/ministerial resources. It's got some helps with tax issues, ministerial tax issues, a free tax guide. Richard Hammer is one of the primary, most well-known accountants in ministers' taxes. He has a church and clergy tax guide that's about 600 pages, but he does for us a free minister's tax guide. It costs nothing to you. It's free online. You can request a printed copy if you want. We've got things about housing allowance, Social Security and the importance of staying in, talking about compensation planning. There are all kinds of resources listed here. Just to go through some of these, I'm not going to dwell on any of these slides, but ministers' taxes are unique. And if you've been a minister for a while, you know that. If you're younger, you may not realize how unique you are. But a minister is an employee for federal income tax, but for Social Security, they're self-employed and have to pay that on their own, either quarterly or have it reduced from their salary. At the church, extra withholding. So we've got some resources around that. Talking about opting out of Social Security, I mentioned probably about 1 in 6 ministers I talked to have opted out of Social Security, but there are some great reasons not to do that. It is a theological, not a financial decision. And so we've got some short videos that are 2 to 3 minutes, information about that and why you should stay in. The dual tax status, how you pay your taxes, and the records. There are some things on our website. Again, great resources, short videos. I mentioned already the tax guide, ministerial tax issues, things of that nature. Minister's housing allowance. If you have questions about that, many of our ministers do. We've got a short video that tells you basically what you can take as housing. It talks about housing in retirement. There's even a list on the left side of the screen, the lower of the 3 things, the amount you designate, what you spend, or the fair rental value. And on the right side of the screen, some of the things that qualify for ministers' housing. So there are resources about that. They're all on that guidestone.org/ministerial resources. So again, Brad, you're welcome to take over, unmute, ask questions. Anyone, I'll open it up, but I'm going to leave up the toll-free number that you can call anytime. And then when it's over, Brad, you're welcome to forward an email from me that has my information. I'll put a link to the educators in case somebody wants to make an appointment, and I'll even have my personal information. So let me stop there. What questions do you have about all that you've heard this morning?
All right. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I've been paying into a life insurance thing through GuideStone for about 10 years now. It's about $100 a month, and it was gonna, I think, equal out to only 50,000 or something like that. But now I've heard that I can go to GuideStone, give $50 because I'm involved, and get 100,000. So is there a way to switch over, or should I stay with that same thing? I'm not sure.
So great question. You can purchase life insurance from GuideStone, and you can keep even part of that as a retiree. I think up to $20,000 you can keep as a retiree. So you can continue to pay for that. The benefits that I mentioned, they do change over time. So based upon your age, let me just put something else up on the screen just briefly and show you this chart, because it depends on your age, the amount. It can be up to 100,000, but it's not 100,000 for everyone. Let me make this a little larger. So if you can see this, if you're 35 and under, it's $100,000 if you're putting $50 a month or more into your church retirement plan. Now, from 36 to 45, it goes down to 75,000. From 46 to 55, it's 50,000. From 56 to 65, it's 25,000. 66 to 70, it goes down to 16. And if you're 71 and over, it's 10,000. But these benefits, if you're putting 50 a month into retirement, they're in force while you're active. But let's say you retire from a church. When you retire, these benefits will phase out, because we look back at the last 12 months, and if you made a contribution of $50 or more from you or the church, either one, in the last 12 months, every month, you have the full benefits. But let's say you're 71 and you retire, and 6 months later something happens. We look back and you only made 6 contributions, but you've been retired for 6 months. You would only have 6/12 or 1/2 of that $10,000 benefit. It's going to phase out over the year. So having said that, I would encourage you, don't totally give up your life insurance. You may need some of that, but this is extra at no cost while you're employed in ministry. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I will stay with my current thing because when it first was presented, it seemed like, yeah, 100,000, $50 a month. But it seems like it'd be better for me to stay where I'm at,
Right.
drawing on the
This would just be extra for you,
yeah.
John, that would come into play if you're still active in saving.
Well, it seems like too, it would be better to put the $50 a month into something like of a money market with you guys or whatever, as
Right.
opposed to that. Um, I mean, if you don't have anything, I guess that's good. But that's why we had locked in 10 years ago to that life insurance that was being drawn out about 100 a month every month. So um, I, this extra, I'd probably be better to go another route.
Right. Well, just know that you do have the extra, and I can always, if you have a one-on-one appointment with any of you, we can pull up your account, and in your account, there's an investment module, and at the bottom, if it says protection benefits, that means you do have these benefits. You can click on it, and it'll give you something like I showed you online. So you should have them if your church is eligible, and most churches, if you're sending money through the cooperative program to your state convention and they recognize you, you should have those benefits. Great question, though.
Joel, just can you talk to these pastors about designating their salary instead of receiving a lump sum? Because if they receive a lump sum and then they give to GuideStone, they pay tax. But if the church sends the contribution in, it's not taxed. Can you talk to that?
Yes. So on the page that I mentioned, guidestone.org/ministerial resources, there is what's called a compensation planning guide. It's a free resource, award-winning. Others have actually used this. Accountants have taken our materials and put it in their resources as well. But if you take a lump sum, let's say a church says, well, Pastor, we've got $75,000 and you split it up any way you want, you're going to be paying income taxes on the full 75,000 along with Social Security taxes. And John, I'll send you something either for full-time or bivocational pastor. We have examples that if you go to the church and the church were to break that down and say, well, we've got 75,000 in resources, but pastor, we're going to pay you 55,000. and we're going to provide health insurance. We're going to provide 10% contribution to your retirement plan. We're going to provide reimbursements for your mileage when you go visit people. We're going to reimburse you for conferences that you go to. If you structure that the right way, you may help a pastor save up to $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a year in taxes, that it frees up more income for the minister if the church structures it the right way. So it's called compensation planning. And again, it's under the guidestone.org/ministerial resources. I'll send you a link to that, Brad. And then I will also send 2 PDFs that you can forward out that show the difference you could save in taxes. It's huge. So make sure if you go to another church and you're talking about salary and they offer you a package, you need this free resource, and say, no, I don't want a package. I'm not going to split it up and pay taxes. Here's what the church needs to do. Great question, Brad. Great question.
Well, how do you set up an appointment with GuideStone with the church?
So you can call the toll-free number. I said I would leave that on the screen and then I quit sharing, but I can put that back up. It's 888-98-GUIDE. So 888-98-GUIDE. You can call us. If you wanted me to do something virtual like this with your church, if you have a budget team or a personnel team and they don't understand the importance of structuring a salary, I would be happy to do a presentation. We have a completely different presentation called compensation planning, and it goes through 6 steps of planning compensation. And it really does talk about the salary, an accountable reimbursement plan, and benefits, and how to determine those needs and how to set this up so that you save the pastor in taxes and free up more money in his pocket rather than paying Uncle Sam. You could give your pastor a raise if you structure things the right way.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, we definitely would need that because we deal with volunteers and everybody don't have that expertise. So
absolutely.
So I definitely want to set up something.
Okay. So I will send my information to Brad. Brad, feel free to distribute that to any and all churches, ministers in your association. And if someone wants to reach back out to me, I'd be happy to set that up and do a presentation with your church. Or we could do, Brad, if it would help, we could do another presentation totally separate called compensation planning about how to do that and send you the resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Good questions.
Questions.
So again, if you decide you want to contact GuideStone, if you're not in the church retirement plan, it's really easy to get enrolled over the phone. If your church has never participated, GuideStone may have to send you a document electronically to your email through DocuSign and get a little information from the church. Make sure the state convention recognizes you. We'll get the church set up because it's in the plan for all these benefits. The church has to send in the money every month. You can't do it personally. It has to come through the church. So we can get that set up over the phone and get you started or send you the resources.
Joel, is there a document on the website that says if I have $100,000 in an IRA, how much of an annuity could I buy with that? For example, would it, $100,000, would that provide me with $1,000 a month for the rest of my life? Or is there a document that goes through all that?
There's not a specific document, Brad, because it depends on your age. If your spouse is part of the lifetime benefit, your spouse's age, and then we have what's called a funding rate that every month that is subject to change slightly. It's almost like a varying interest rate that we pay you extra based on us managing your investment. So you're welcome to call us if you have an account with GuideStone in the church retirement plan. You can look that up and see online, or an educator can meet with you and show you the amount that would buy $100,000 at various ages. Obviously, the older you are, the less life expectancy you have, so the higher your benefit would be the older you are. But also it depends on interest rates, and those have gone up quite a bit in the last few years. So you could be getting more locked in now for a lifetime if you do something than you could have got 5 years ago. But good question. We don't have a document. We can pull it up on an individual basis.
Okay. Right. Any other questions, guys?
Joel, I have another question.
Yes.
I opted out of Social Security in '97.
Okay.
I had only one church from '97 to, uh, I opted out in '97. And then our church plant folded. So I went into painting. And for the next 20, 25 years, I I painted as a contractor. So I do have my 40 credits. I do have my thing. But in 2014, when I went to the SSA Gov to get my own thing as far as how it was, it shows from 2014 up to the present zero, as far as not having anything taken out. But I do have the credit, so I'm locked in at 2014 as to what they would give for determining my Social Security. Is that correct, right?
Yes,
So
they look at your 35 highest years. So if you were painting from 97 to 14 for 17 years, you've got 17 figures out of 35, but the other 18 are going to be zeros. So it's going to bring your benefit down. Your average benefit will be less because of
right,
that.
right. So that's why we thought at the church that we'd be a little more aggressive for the IRA. I can't remember whether I have an IRA through GuideStone or I have the 401k, or is it the same? Or
No,
are we
there are
talking?
different. If it's through the church, it's what's called a 403b. You can put more in, you get housing if it's set up through the church. If
Okay,
you're sending in a check yourself or having it drafted from your bank account in an IRA, those don't qualify for the minister's housing allowance. But
okay,
if it's coming from the church, you're in the right plan. If not, we can get you in the right plan, but
yeah,
enroll the other over. But you do need to be in the church retirement plan.
right, yeah. We have been. I don't know if this is at one point we were supporting co-op, but what we decided to do is just support missionaries, whether it's NAMBY or whatever, on an individual basis instead of going through co-op. But we chose that about 7 or 8 years ago. So will that affect any of the plan that we have initiated with you guys as far as with the church? Because we're still Southern Baptist. We just don't contribute to co-op. We do it a different way.
The only difference that would make, John, is the state convention splits the cost of those free benefits I mentioned earlier about the life insurance, disability, things like that. They split the costs with GuideStone. And so if you're not giving through the cooperative program, they may say, oh, well, we don't recognize this church because they're not giving. So we're not going to pay the premiums to get this free benefits of disability and life insurance. But it doesn't impact the money that you've saved and all the options you have and the minister's
Okay.
housing and retirement. It's just those disability and survivor benefits that may be impacted.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Great questions, guys. Anything else that comes to mind? Well, Brad, let me say
Well,
thank you on behalf of GuideStone for allowing me to be with you this morning. I know you said you're recording this, so
yes.
you can send this out, and then I will follow up with an email to you and some resources just as reminders that you can also send out. And then if someone wants to get with me for example, the compensation planning, you need someone to present to your church, or Brad, you decide you want to do another one of these on compensation planning and make it available to all churches. Just let me know. Any way that GuideStone can come alongside and help. That's why we're here.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you so much, Joel, for presenting and sharing with us. We all need to be good stewards of what God has given us. And so thank you so much for helping us in that. So all
Absolutely.
right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Good to see all
Appreciate
you guys. Have a great
All right.
day.
Thank
Right.
you again so much.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Yes, sir.